Hey everybody. Tonight's video I think is the coolest one I've done so far. Tonight we're going to sculpt a whale using Sculptris and paint the model. And then we're going to take that model and put it into Blender and rig it and pose it, and then we're going to put that into an aquatic scene in Vue. It should be a lot of fun, so let's get to it. Okay, so we're starting off here in Sculptris, and I'm going to start just shaping my whale. Let's turn off this wireframe here and make sure we're in symmetry mode. In symmetry mode, this makes sure that things happen on both sides at once. You can see a little line here that indicates the line of symmetry, and you can click Control Z to undo anything that you've recently done, and we'll undo that little movement I made there. So what I'm going to do is look at this from the side. If you hold down the Shift key to turn, and you can't really see it too well since it's just a ball, but you see the line of symmetry moving, you just click and hold outside the object with the left mouse button and drag to make it move. And if you want it to lock into place, hold down the Shift key and it will lock to the nearest axis. So here it locked to the front, and we want it to lock on the side, so we're having it lock on the right side. And I'm going to select the grab brush here, which is probably the most important brush for sculpting, and we'll set it up pretty big. And then I'll drag my shape out here some. We're going to make this the body of the whale. Now you see here it's getting a little bit warped. I think that's because the strength is a little too low. What it's doing underneath the scenes here is it's creating polygons as we drag this out. And when you have this detail thing set up all the way, it's going to create more polygons in the area that you're manipulating. So you can see here as I'm dragging, a couple of polygons are appearing. And the mesh is getting denser. So anyway, we want to make this look kind of like a whale, so we'll sort of give it a vague whale-like shape. I'm going to turn that wireframe off, it's just distracting right now. And to scroll in and out, I'm using the scroll wheel, and if I want to move the whole object, I just hold down the Alt key and right click and drag. When you zoom in, it kind of changes the brush shape as well, or the brush size. That way, you can also change it using the slider up here. Anyway, we're gonna drag out the whale's fluke. Just like that. And maybe we'll give him a dorsal fin. Now this is gonna be a blue whale, so he doesn't have much of a dorsal fin. Let's reduce the size here. And we'll just pull that up right there. And give him some side fins. And a mouth. Okay, to give him a mouth, what you can do is select the draw tool. Now the draw tool allows you, kind of adds mass to your sculpture. So in this case, I dragged across with the draw enabled, and then I held down the Shift key and drew across it again to smooth the top side. And just kind of smooth that out, make it look kind of like a muscle over his fin there. But you can hold down the Alt key to, just clicking and dragging with the left in draw mode adds. But if you hold down the Alt key, it goes in the reverse direction. So that is how we're going to create a mouth for this guy. And I'm just kind of circling here to make it move, and that sort of created the mouth there. And we'll create a lower jaw. Just by dragging that out like that. Now let's drag the head to match here. And see how I got pointy here? Well, I can fix that a variety of ways. Let me try the inflate brush to see how that works. And I'm just clicking here and inflating, and now I got kind of a whale shape. So you see, that quickly I've already got a pretty good whale shape here. So now I'm going to jump ahead because this will take an awfully long time for me to get sculpting all the details. So we'll jump to where I finished at least the sculpture. And pretty much I'm not going to do anything but use the grab tool to pull things and the draw tool to maybe draw in a few details. For instance, I might want to do teeth. So after that, I'll demonstrate one real quick. And I'll do the teeth something like this. I'm just using the draw tool to kind of create a base for the tooth. And then I use the grab tool to maybe drag it up and make it a little bit pointier. And hold down the shift key to maybe make it even pointier than that. So his teeth will be done in somewhat that manner. Alright, so we'll jump ahead and I'll show you what this looks like after I've done some sculpting work for a few hours. Okay, so here's what the whale looks like, the sculpture looks like when it's done. We're about to go to paint mode so we can paint this model, which is something else you can do in Scuptris. Now, a couple of things before we go to paint though. First is to be sure your sculpture is done, because you cannot go backwards, which is one of the shortcomings of Scuptris. It only once you go to paint, you can't go back without losing all your painting information. So that's the first thing, to make sure your sculpture is done. And the second thing I want you to check on is to make sure your mesh is not too dense. And to do that, you click on this W looking thing here to get your wireframe. And anywhere where the mesh looks too dense, now I've intentionally created a spot right here, you go over it with this reduce brush to loosen the mesh up. And so, just like that, probably a little too loose there, you have a lower density mesh, which will make your sculpture work better in other programs. Because when it has a really dense mesh, it'll take up a lot of memory. And it works pretty well here in Sculptris or something like ZBrush, but once we move to Vue, it's not going to work so good. So once you've got your mesh to where you like it, and you want to go to paint mode, you just click on this big button up here that says paint. And then I usually set the resolution all the way up. That'll give me as detailed a painting as possible. And I never mess with this type mapping stuff. And then just click OK, and you're probably going to wind up waiting a little while as it generates the UV map, which is the painting portion of the model. Okay, so here we are in paint mode. Now the first thing I like to do in paint mode, you can see here it's got this kind of checker pattern on it. I like to just fill it in all one color. So we'll pick a nice middle tone, lightish color, and just click this F button a few times and that'll fill it in. Okay, the next thing is actually I like to do is what is more sculpting. But we're not going to actually be changing the underlying mesh. Now we're going to be painting what's called a bump map. And this is where you can fill in your details. So right now I have this brush loaded, but it's not enabled. So we'll enable that, and we'll go loading the bump brush. And you can see here, let's see if I got to zoom in maybe. It looks like I'm sculpting this more on this model. But if you see up here, when I get to the edge, you see that it doesn't actually change the outline. It's just an illusion created with light and shadow essentially. But it's not really there once you turn to the side. And this is a great way to get in some details without destroying the memory of your computer as you do this kind of stuff. So let me click Control Z a few times to get rid of all these. And I'm going to load a alright, so I have here these textures. Some of these I've actually taken, they were actually ZBrush alpha maps, and I just converted them from ZBrush wants them in Photoshop format. I changed them to PNG format. And I'll pick this one here, this reptile skin. And using that, I can kind of give this guy a kind of a more gnarly looking face here. So let's increase the size of our brush. I'm not doing a lot here, I'm just tapping on it here and there. And actually, I don't think I like that, so let's pick something else. Oh, here we go, this alien skin one. This is another one I downloaded from the Pixelogic site. Let's look there. You don't see a whole lot of difference. Let's increase the strength quite a bit. There we go. Now I kind of look at that look of like barnacles and stuff growing on his face. And as I said, this isn't going to change the underlying mesh. This is just going to create kind of a specialized file that a lot of rendering software can read and use to let's smooth that out some. If you hold down the shift key and go over it, it works the same way as it did in sculpting mode. It smooths things out. But anyway, a lot of rendering engines will be able to read that bump file and create this extra detail. Now, I said earlier we're doing a blue whale, but this is actually if you'll notice, a sperm whale. I misidentified my whale there. So let's see if I use this leathery skin one right here, because a sperm whale has wrinkles along its side right here. And you see here it's kind of stuck at this angle, this 45-degree angle. You can fix that by clicking this directional thing here, and now it kind of moves with the mouse. Although you might be at a bit of a challenge to figure out which direction you need to move to get it sideways. There we go. And that gets our wrinkles in. I'll probably go back in and do this a little bit more detailed in a few minutes. So anyway, once we've got our details painted in, we can go and use our paintbrush and start layering some darker colors on. And I still have my brush enabled there. So you can do it this way. That's pretty solid. A better way is to load something more like this alien skin thing here and enable it. Have some sort of texture and turn off airbrush, or turn off airbrush, sorry. Go to options and increase the brush spacing up to about 85–90%. And that doesn't put it on quite so fast. Let's put that strength all the way up. There we go. And not quite so evenly, so you get kind of a spray paint effect. And I'm going to jump ahead again because I can spend quite a few hours painting this guy. So we'll jump ahead and be back in a second to show you what it looks like painted. Okay, so I've finished painting the whale here. You can see I gave him, white teeth, that kind of pinkish mouth. And I did some more bump map work, gave him some wrinkles around his mouth. And along his side, like we saw before. I think I actually undid those a little bit. But, yeah, so here's what he looks like painted, and I'll show you how you save this off. And now the first thing you want to do is actually save the model. And to do that, you just hit this little thing that looks like a down arrow with OBJ. And we'll call him sperm whale 1. Well, let's call it sperm whale raw, because what we're going to do is fix the model up a little bit more in Blender. And we'll save that off. And then click this option, not that, show advanced tools. And this is how you actually save the painting and the bump map. So we'll save the texture map. And it's going to save it as a JPEG for this case. And then we'll call it sperm whale texture. And we also want to save that bump map. So we have sperm whale bump. And that saves it as a TIFF file. I like to go in and change that TIFF back to a JPEG, but it doesn't give you the option from Scuptris here. And with that, we're done with Scuptris. Okay, so here we are in Blender, and I'm going to start out by deleting that cube, and we'll import our whale. So up to File and Import, Wavefront OBJ, and I put it on the desktop, and here it is, sperm whale raw.obj. And now we've loaded our whale. Let's see, do I have a camera hanging around here? Oh, there it is. Okay, so now if I render this, you immediately see a problem though. So if I go to render, and you see he's flat gray. The bump map and texture that we created aren't here. So let's bring those in. And to do that, we just go over to make sure the whale is selected. You just do that by right-clicking on the whale. And you click on this tab here that looks like a little circle with some stuff on it. That's the materials tab for the object. And we'll just give this a name. whale skin. It doesn't matter, you don't have to do a whole lot here, just do that. And then go to the next tab, which is the textures. We'll create a new texture, and it's going to be an image. And we'll open that file on our desktop. That was sperm whale texture. And a couple more things we need to do. We need the projection is flat coordinates to be UV. And we're actually going to create another one. So I'm going to click here and click new. And this is going to be another image. And this is going to be our bump map. So we'll open up the bump map that was also on the desktop. Here it is, sperm whale bump. And for that one, we're also going to make the coordinates UV. And we're going to turn off, the influence is not going to be the color. Instead, it's going to be the normal. So now, if I were to render it, it's going to render with that bump map. And the we see a little bit of the bumps here. Now it's a bit reflective here, so let's go back to the texture here, or to the material. And that's this specular value here. Let's just set that down to 0. So let's try one more time to render that. Now I'm not going to do the final render here in Blender. I'm just using this as a testing ground. Now it still kind of looks kind of all black. That's because I don't have any lights really set up in this scene. If I were to do that, you'd probably see some of the grays and stuff that we had going on. But this is just a quick thing to make sure that the texture is there. So I don't know. Let's add a light maybe. We'll move that down there. And over to this side. So now let's give it a quick render and see if that shows up a little bit better. All right, now you're starting to see some of the painting that we had down here. That was kind of the white underbelly I had and the lighter grays. Okay, so that's pretty much done. That's pretty much I'm using Blender here just to add the texture and bump map kind of into one file. But while we're here, let's rig this guy and pose him for our next part of the scene. And that's not really all that hard. I'm gonna tap the 7 button on the number key to be on top here, and add. I'm going to add a single bone armature, and it added it in the wrong place, so let's delete that. Okay, I forgot to do something first, which is I have to go to let's see, object, snap, and cursor to center. Okay, that snaps the kind of a functional cursor to the center of the whole scene. And hold on the scroll wheel and drag. That's how I'm kind of rotating around that center. Okay, so now I'm going to add armature, single bone. And you can't really see anything. But we've added a rigging armature. And to make it more visible, you can see this little bone here. You click on that tab. Actually, this one before the object data. And go into X-ray mode, and our bone appears right there. It looks like this kind of pyramid shape. So if I click the tab button and go into edit mode, I can edit parts of this bone. I'm going to want to edit this end. And to edit stuff here, you want to use just the blue and green arrows because you want the parts to stay on the center line. You don't want to do generic transformations or anything like that. So here we're going to put the bone somewhere in the middle. Let's get all of it here and move it more towards his hip. The hip, when you're rigging models, the hip tends to be where you kind of build everything out from. So this will be sort of where the whale's hip is. And to finish creating a skeleton for this guy, I'm going to select one end. I'm going to hit the E key, which means extrude. And now I can, if I drag the mouse immediately, I get this new bone. I don't want to do that though. I want to hit right click. And then I want to use the green and blue arrows to adjust that endpoint. So I click the E button, right click on the mouse, and use the green arrow and the blue arrow here. And essentially what's going to happen when we apply this to the model is these are going to be the points around which the mesh rotates. So E key. Right click with the mouse, And for the tail, I'm going to go right about here. Now for the tail, I'm going to create kind of a small control. And that's going to be sort of the whole tail there. This one little thing is going to control this whole tail. And the reason I have that little one there is I'm going to need to branch out from here to get these parts of the whale's fluke. So I'm going to hit extrude, E again, and right click. And now I'm going to tap the G key, which is grab for moving stuff, the X key, which locks the movement we're about to do in the X plane, and hit the number 1. And that moves it out 1 unit. And then I right click with the mouse. Oops. Try that again. We're going to G1, oops, extrude, right click, G1, and enter. And now you'll see by the 1 put it out 1. See, this is the 1 grid line. And I'm going to click on that little point again. I'm going to extrude, E, right click with the mouse, the G key, and then hit X to lock it in the X plane, and then -1. And what this does is it ensures symmetry. So now I have a bone going out, 1 in the negative direction and 1 in the positive direction. And if I select the end of this bone and hold down the Shift key and right click to select the end of this one, I can control them both at the same time by moving the green arrow in the Y direction, or the blue arrow in the Z direction. And if I want them to move out, I tap the S key for scale and move out away from the center. And that should be pretty good bones for the tail. So real quick, I'm going to rig the rest of this guy. Extrude. Okay, now for his jaw, I'm going to create an extra point around near the rotation point here. And I'm going to do basically what I did with the tail here. I'm going to extrude, right click, GX1, and click there again. Extrude, right click, GX-1. And I got the points from which I can build the bones for the flippers. Let's move that down to about there. We got to do a lot of rotating here to make sure you're getting everything where it needs to be. I'm going to use the scale function to move them in a little. Alright, that'll be the base point of our flippers. And then we'll you can, and I didn't do this with the tail, but I could do this with the flippers. If I hit extrude and right click, and then I can scale and move, and I symmetrically create more bones for this whale. Alright, and when I'm ready to apply this to the mesh, I like to save it. Let's see, we had that on the desktop. And we'll just call this sperm whale. Because I find it sometimes if I make a mistake with the rigging, it's kind of hard to Control Z to undo. So now to apply the rigging to the model, I need to make sure I'm in object mode. And I select the whale, and then shift and right click to select the mesh. You have to do this in this, or to select the skeleton, and you have to do it in this order. Hold down the control key and hit P, and with automatic weights. And it's going to grind away for a few minutes. And now we've applied our rigging to our model. That was actually pretty easy. Rigging used to take me many, many hours with something like Poser or something like that. And then I can just go into pose mode here, and we'll select a bone and rotate. And you can see here I'm moving our whale. So we can give him a quick pose here. And I'm just clicking the R key and rotating. Now, whales are not really that dynamic of a posing thing, so I'm not going to do a whole lot to them here. Give him a little bit of a curve. And if you want to see what he looks like without that rigging skeleton, you can always go back into object mode and then click the rig and tap the H button and that'll hide it. And you see how here we have a little bit of a goof. I'm just going to fix that in post-production, I think. But I could go back in and mess around with the rigging trying to get it just perfect. But we'll use this for now. So I'm going to save off this object, and to do that I'm just going to hit the File, Export, OBJ, and we'll call this one Sperm Whale Posed. And click the Export. And with that, we're ready to go to Vue. Okay, so here we are in Vue, and I'm just going to start out by deleting this sphere I have here, and we'll bring the whale in. And to do that, you click on this cube with an arrow. That puts you in the loading of objects dialog. And we'll click on this arrow to get to the file system, and we're here on the desktop, and here's our sperm whale posed.obj, and we'll bring him in and see if we can find a kind of a good position for him with regards to the camera. That looks pretty good right there. Let's get the sun on him in the right direction. We want it coming over from this direction. Alright, something I'm going to do real quick. This is just going to reflect light up. First of all, I'm going to make sure I have the right lighting system set up. So I'm going to click and hold, or I'm just going to click and not hold, just click on the this little sun behind a cloud here, and that'll put me in the atmosphere editor. I'm going to make sure that my light is set for global radiosity. And I have the sunlight set maybe a little more intense than it needs to be. Quality boost, I have it set at -1. This is just to save rendering time. But it doesn't really have much of an effect on the quality of the final render. So I'm going to create a cube. Here, let's start with a whale here. Create a cube. I'm going to drag it down outside of the angle of view to make it really large. What this is going to do, because I have global radiosity turned on, is it's going to reflect light up and kind of illuminate the bottom of him a little bit. It kind of acts like a fill light. Alright, so let's have a quick preview render of him. And he looks pretty good. That bump map, though, that we put in is not showing up very well. So I'm going to click on the whale, and I'm going to increase the power of that bump map. You see here it's set down to 0.1. Let's set it up to 2. And while we're here, I'm going to go into the highlights, and I'm going to give him a nice shiny white highlight. And don't want it to be too bright and too shiny. But now he looks a little bit more like he's wet, and the bumps are coming out a whole lot better. They might, in fact, be a little too strong, so let's back them off just a bit. Let's say 1.5. Now we're going to lose some detail once we add water to this, too. That looks pretty good right there. Let's move him down just a little bit there. Alright, let's add some water to this scene. So to do that, you just click on this thing here that looks like water, and if you don't see water, you can click and hold, and you'll have a selection of 3 different items. Click the water. So here we've added the water, and now we want to make it go over the whale's head, or over the whale. And now when you look at it, things have changed a little bit. He looks like he's underneath the water. So let's select a good water texture for that water. And that's going to be under liquids. I like to use tropical water for underwater scenes. That looks pretty good there. It needs to, it's not very murky looking, and I think it's because he's just too big, or too close to the camera and not big enough. So let's select the sperm whale here, make him a good deal bigger, and back him away from that camera. And bigger still. And you can wind up playing a little bit just to get the right distance. Let's go with that, and let's move that little water back up a bit higher. Okay, now we want to add some sunlight into this. Let's move the whale just a little bit more. And to add that sunlight, we're just going to add a quadratic spotlight. So I'm going to click and hold here on the lights and select this little square looking spotlight. I'll move it above the scene and kind of angle it like sun rays coming down. We want to make sure we hit our whale too. Right about there. And we want this to, we'll double click on the light. We want this to be a volumetric light with a light gel. So we'll enable light gel. Right click here or click this little thing here to load a material. And we will load a light gel. This one will be fine here, this caustics gel. Now we're looking pretty interesting. But I think I want to move the light back a little further. As well as the whale. Let's make sure he's in that light. Oh, there we go. Now we're getting somewhere. So now let's have a quick preview render of that. So now it looks like he's kind of coming out of that murk, and we got that light shining off of him there. I think maybe the shining's a little bit too bright. We'll darken that up. So we'll go back in here to our highlights and reduce the brightness. That's a bit better now. It looks like he's under the water. And there we go. With that, we are ready to render. And kind of an interesting looking sperm whale. We're definitely going to have to do some fixes in post-production. But that was a bit of fun. So let's send it to the final render. We'll just click and hold here, set final. And we'll render to screen, and we'll give it a pretty large size, 5200. And set it off rendering. So we'll see you in a few days when it's done. Okay, so here I've loaded my whale in Gimp to do a little bit of post-production work. I'm not going to do too much on this. It's one of the nice things about aquatic scenes. We do have this problem where we have the geometry messed up from the when we posed him. So we'll fix that first. And I'll just zoom in here. And I'm just going to use the clone tool with a nice soft brush. Hold down the control key and then click somewhere outside nearby. Let's make it a little bit bigger. And I just kind of erase it out. Maybe get a little further, or make the brush a tiny bit smaller to get back in right here under the chin for some detail. And with that, we fixed that error. Alright, so let's got a couple of just errors in the geometry, like right here you have a hard line. If you want to fix that, just same thing, clone tool. Just hold down the control key and click somewhere nearby. And just kind of go over that hard line. Okay, while I'm here, I see the eye, and I want to do something real quick just to make this eye work out real nice. I'm just going to kind of pick a light color and just a soft brush, make it kind of small. Smaller, well, that's probably pretty good right there. And just put a little highlight on that eye. Gives that eye a lot of dimension, and it's going to make it seem like the whale's looking at us a little bit better. So I'm going to zoom back out some, so you can see here. It really gives a lot of definition to that eye, just that one little mark. Alright, the only other thing I see that really needs fixing is this line right here. There's a horizon line that was kind of an artifact from Vue. The easiest way is just to go to the smudge brush, go kind of big, and Just kind of smudge that out. Be careful not to smudge the whale. So I might want to go with a smaller brush than what I have here. You can really see it over here. Be real careful where that whale is. If I wanted to, I could probably, select just an area just so I wouldn't hit that whale. And zoom out to where we can see it all. Alright, and that looks pretty good. Let's do a little bit of color adjustment. And for that, I'm just going to go into the curves here and let's make the highlights a little brighter and the shadows a little darker. And you can see here that gives just a lot more drama to the scene. Okay, so we're almost done. Real quick, what I want to do is just add some indications that we're underwater. And to do that, I'm going to use a bubble brush, and I have that selected here. It's something you can download, and I'll give you a link to that in the show notes. It's a free brush, and I use it for all of my underwater scenes. And what I'm going to do is just put a stream of bubbles coming up from the blowhole here. Make sure I have the paintbrush tool selected, and just zip up like that, and there we have some bubbles. And maybe he'll have created some bubbles back here. And to do that, instead of drawing them all individually, we will increase the jitter to a pretty high amount. And then lower it as we get a little bit closer to his tail. Just like that, we have a little bit of just bubbles in the water. I don't want to put any there. Put a few more up here, though. So it looked like he's just swished his tail and created some bubbles. And just like that, I'd say we're finished with this image. So I'm going to save it off. I'm going to export as, and we'll call this sperm whale. And now I've already saved it a couple of times, but we'll overwrite whatever I've saved. And I'm going to make sure the quality is as high as I can make it and still have it under 25 megabytes. And to see about the size of what the JPEG file will be, you just click on the Show Preview and Image window thing here and wait a few minutes while it calculates the size. 11.3 megabytes is fine, so we'll save it at 100%. Okay, so I've logged into my FineArtAmerica account here, and we're going to upload the whale picture that we just finished. Because I don't want to show you just how to make the art. I want to show you how to, get it up there and sell it too. So I have my FineArtAmerica account here, and I'm going to just click on my name, and that's going to take me to my gallery page. In this case, I have it set to go to images. You might have it go to the sub-galleries page. But in order to upload, you have to go to this one right here, this images. And to upload an image, you just click the button that says Upload Image. We're going to choose the file. And I'm going to find our whale image, which is right here. And upload. And then we just wait for it to upload. Okay, so it's finished uploading. And couple of things. I'm going to add a title here. Now I've already actually written some of this stuff out ahead of time just so you don't have to watch me typing. So I'm just going to copy and paste this stuff in. So we have our title. And now we have a description. Now this description, by the way, that I have is, I've made it kind of keyword rich. I have sperm whale, murky depths, ocean, water, aquatic. So, one of the things you want to do is make your description have a lot of keywords in it. That's what Google's going to pick up on, and that's what's going to bring customers to your site from Google. So you want to, be pretty descriptive. And for the people who, other than the search engine bots, you also want to have this make sense for people. So it's a good idea to describe the scene, kind of say why you made it, and then maybe how you made it. It's the kind of thing people want to know, so it's a good thing to include. And then I have some keywords down here. I'm just going to copy those and paste that into the keyword section here. A few other things, the display options. You don't want to enable the watermark that puts like a little FineArtAmerica watermark on all the pictures. That sometimes confuses buyers, so don't do that. Enable full resolution preview allows viewers to click on a section of the image to see a larger version of it. The way FineArtAmerica works, it doesn't allow viewers to see the full resolution image, so they can't, or at least it makes it harder for them to steal it if you have someone who is into stealing artwork off the internet. This is a picture of a whale. It's work safe. I have a bunch of sub-galleries here, and I'm going to put this one in the aquatic life gallery. And then I have some groups here. I don't think I'm going to contribute to any of these right now, but it's generally a good idea to find some groups that things match in and contribute to those. The category is already set up as digital art. I have no original because because it is digital art. I already have some preset prices that I've saved. There's a way you can set default prices in your control panel for your account, so I've already set up all the default prices. And something you might want to look into if your images might be good for illustration of some sort, you can look into this image licensing program. This allows people to pay a royalty fee to get access to the high resolution file, so they can use it for their own commercial purposes. It's a useful thing. Also, because right now it's 7 in the evening, it's probably a pretty good time to post stuff. I can do a little bit of marketing by posting this to my Facebook fan page and to my Twitter account. And with that done, all I got to do is submit. And just like that, our image is up and for sale. It's been posted on Facebook and Twitter. So there it goes. So, I mean, even just a few minutes from now, if someone were to pop on by and see it and like it, they could come by here and buy a print. So it's a great little system there. And with that, I think we'll call this one finished. So if you like this video and you'd like to see more, or read some of my articles, or even check out some of my art, you can find me on my blog at www.introvertartist.com. And here I post articles on how to make art, how to sell it online, tools that you can use. I have links to my gallery, as well as you can subscribe to my newsletter here. And my newsletter is something I send out every Wednesday with news on my latest artworks, articles, videos, promotions, discounts, and I even throw in a free computer wallpaper every week. So thanks, everybody, and good night.